Hello and welcome to this writing lesson. We're going to talk about narrative paragraphs. Narration is story writing. When you write a narrative paragraph, you write about events in the order that they happen. In other words, you use time order to organize your sentences. As you read this model paragraph, look for words and phrases that tell when something happened. Pause the video, read this paragraph, answer the questions, and then play the video again. In this paragraph, the writer used time order to tell what happened first, what happened next, what happened after that, and so on. Notice the kind of words and phrases used to show time order. These are called time order signals because they signal the order in which events happen. Please pause your video and take a look at these time order signals. Play the video after you're done. Put a comma after a time order signal that comes before the subject at the beginning of a sentence. There are some exceptions, of course. Then, soon, now are usually not followed by a comma. These are exceptions. Look at these examples. At first, none of us realized what was happening. For a minute or two, we were too scared to move. Then, no comma. We tried to call our parents at work. You probably know what insubordination is. That's right. Insubordination means not obeying the rules. But subordination, particularly in writing, is something else altogether. When you first learned to read and write, almost every sentence was an independent clause, like I go home. Every idea, small as it was, had exactly the same emphasis as every other idea. Of course, nobody in college writes like that, but too often college students have not progressed far enough from that grade school style. Your challenge is to combine related ideas into one sentence, giving them just the right emphasis. To succeed, you must learn subordination, which means making less important ideas part of more important ideas. We all know that a subordinate is someone who ranks lower than someone else. Parts of a sentence have a rank structure too. Look at this rank structure in a sentence. Independent clauses are the more important sentences. Dependent clauses are the less important, phrases are less important, and the words are the least important. Ideas expressed in an independent clause naturally seem more important than ideas expressed with only a word. Subordination, then, reduces the emphasis of an idea by lowering its position on the rank structure. To subordinate an idea originally in an independent clause, we might place it in a dependent clause, or a phrase, or sometimes even a word. For example, look at the original sentence. Art flew to Gillibend. He arrived on time. To subordinate this, you can make it part of a dependent clause by saying, because he flew to Gillibend, Art arrived on time. To subordinate this into a phrase, you can say, by flying to Gillibend, Art arrived on time. Notice that subordination here has two effects. It shows what the writer considers the important idea. It shows the relationship between the two ideas. The words because in the first revision and by in the second revision serve as road signs. They tell readers to be ready for a cause-effect relationship. Because something happened, something else resulted. Because he flew to Gillibend, Art arrived on time. These road signs make the reader's task much easier. Apart from subordination at the sentence level, it also is important elsewhere in the writing process, especially in pre-writing when you cluster related ideas and when you develop a topic sentence. Let's return to our sentence example. We could have subordinated the second independent clause if we had decided that Art's flying to Gilliband was more important than the idea that he arrived on time. Let's look at the original sentence one more time. Art flew to Gilliband. He arrived on time. Now, to subordinate this into a dependent clause, you can say, Art flew to Gilliband where he arrived on time. And to subordinate this into a phrase, you can say, Art flew to Gilliband arriving on time. When you write therefore, you must decide which ideas you wish to emphasize and which ideas you wish to subordinate. You may think to yourself, but I use subordination all the time. Sure you do. Probably not enough. Let's express some ideas in grade school style, early college style, and a more sophisticated style. Let's look at degrees of subordination in these paragraphs. Now, if you were in grade school and you were just beginning to write, this is how your writing might look like. The girl is playing tennis, period. Her name is Sally, period. She's a beginner, period. She's taking lessons, period. Karen is teaching her, period. Karen is a professional, period. Karen teaches at the Andromeda Club, period. Karen teaches every Tuesday morning. If you want to subordinate this and make your writing style a little bit more improved, this is how you would write this. Sally is playing tennis, period. She's taking beginning lessons from Karen, period. Karen is a professional, comma, and she teaches at the Andromeda Club every Tuesday morning. Now, if you were to subordinate this and make an improvement, this is how the writing would look. Sally is taking beginning tennis lessons from Karen, a professional who teaches at Andromeda Club every Tuesday morning. The last revision certainly is easier to read than either of other versions. Why? Subordination pushes the unimportant ideas to the side so the readers can easily see the most important idea, which is the independent clause. Try to apply subordination during editing. Here's the final tip to help you with subordinations. On a first draft, you're naturally too busy thinking of ideas and how they relate to each other to worry about subordination at the sentence level. When you edit the draft during the rewriting phase, pay attention to how you piece ideas together within sentences. Depending on the time you have available, you may even want to make a trip through your paper, beginning to end, just working on the best way to combine ideas into better sentences. The results will be worth the effort. Remember, your effort as you write makes your readers' work much easier. Subordination lets readers see which main ideas you consider important. After watching all these videos so far, you may suspect that good writing consists of one complicated sentence after another. Not so. You lose readers after a couple of pages. On the other hand, how would you like to read sentence after sentence in grade school or early college style? Well, then, is the solution a compromise of all medium-length sentences? No, not really. Good writing has a mixture of varied sentence lengths and varied sentence structures. Although experienced writers avoid varying sentences just for the sake of variety, good sentence variety is important for good coherence or the smooth flow from one idea to the next. If you find yourself writing many short sentences in a row, or beginning many sentences with the subject of the independent clause, ask yourself, do my sentence patterns help my ideas flow smoothly? Or do they make my ideas seem fragmented and choppy? Actually, not very many beginning writers have poor sentence variety from writing only long sentences. The problem is usually a series of short sentences. Look at this example. The new governor was sworn in today, period. He is a Democrat, period. 10,000 people attended the ceremony, period. The governor gave a brief inaugural address, period. The governor promised to end unemployment, period. He said he would reduce inflation, period. He also promised to improve the environment, period. The audience gave him a standing ovation, period. Pretty dismal, right? The average sentence length is only 6.25 words, and all the sentences except the second are either 6 or 7 words long, not overwhelming in variety. Let's use subordination to come up with something better. The new Democratic governor was sworn in today, period. At a ceremony where 10,000 people attended, he gave a brief inaugural address promising to end unemployment, reduce inflation, and improve the environment. The audience gave him a standing ovation. This version is certainly much easier to read, mainly because we've eliminated choppiness and subordinated some unimportant ideas. The average sentence is now 12 words long, within the desirable goal of 12 to 20 words per sentence. Let's look again at the bad example that began the discussion on sentence length. Notice how many sentences begin with the subject and its modifiers of an independent clause. Every sentence begins with the subject of an independent clause, which makes it hard for readers to move from idea to idea. To make this paragraph easier to read, some of the sentences should begin with dependent clauses, others with phrases, and still others with transitional words. For example, look again at the revision. The new Democratic governor was sworn in today, period. At a ceremony where 10,000 people attended, he gave a brief inaugural address promising to end unemployment, reduce inflation, and improve the environment, period. The audience gave him a standing ovation, period. Now, many sentences, of course, should begin with the subject of an independent clause. Still, they should not all look alike. They could end with a dependent clause, they could contain a couple of independent clauses, or they could even contain a series of parallel phrases or clauses. Try to apply sentence variety during editing. You may think you would never begin a lot of sentences all the same way, and surely you'd never string together all short, choppy sentences or long, overly complex ones. Yet, in our first draft, many of us write with just those patterns. We think of an idea and write it down. Subject, verb. We think of another idea and write it down. Subject, verb, and so on. Similarly, we become comfortable writing sentences with about the same lengths, short ones or long ones, whichever we're used to writing. If we don't take the time to rewrite the draft, our sentences look much the same. Check your last few writings to see if you've fallen into this bad habit. Good writing is not an automatic process. a flow of uninterrupted inspiration flowing forth onto the page. Good writing results from a painstaking and very conscious process. Don't just hope sentence variety will happen in your writing. After you write a draft, ask yourself these questions. Are my sentences different lengths? Do my sentences begin in a variety of ways? Do the sentences that begin with the subject of an independent clause have a variety of structures? If the answers are no, edit your paper for sentence variety. Be careful, though, not to sacrifice clarity for the sake of variety. And don't create grotesque, unnatural sentences. Variety is a means to achieve good writing. It is not the goal itself. When editing your writing, you should consider the sentence length and variety in your paragraph. Try to keep your sentences between 12 to 20 words and use different structures. Let's look at a short paragraph with overly simple and repetitive sentence style. Pause your video, please. Read this paragraph and play the video again when you're done. These 8 sentences average 8.6 words per sentence, and only this sentence falls in the desired range of 12 to 20 words per sentence. In addition, each sentence begins with the subject of an independent clause. Now let's edit for both varied sentence lengths and structures. We do this by looking at what ideas can be combined and which ideas should be emphasized in those combinations through subordination. Look at the paragraph. The first 2 sentences share this idea of time. For a long time and still remains. So let's use subordination to combine them and focus on the continuing menace of the disease. Although scientists have known of sickle cell anemia for a long time, it remains a menace for African Americans. Sentences 4 and 5 both deal with scientific testing, while sentence 6 indicates only limited positive results have been achieved. Sentence 3 contains the bottom line, no cure. We can combine all 4 sentences into one effective one. Like, while scientists have tested several drugs and chemicals, and some reduce a few ill effects, nobody has discovered a cure. The 7th sentence can stand alone, though we can strengthen it by adding only. For example, the fight against sickle cell anemia has been waged on only a small scale. The 8th sentence stands on its own. Don't be concerned that it only has 5 words. With the other sentences in the paragraph now considerably longer, a short sentence adds to the variety. Serious research is just beginning. Now let's put all our revised sentences together and evaluate the results. Although scientists have known of sickle cell anemia for a long time, it remains a menace for African Americans, period. While scientists have tested several drugs and chemicals and some reduce a few ill effects, nobody has discovered a cure, period. The fight against sickle cell anemia has been waged on only a small scale, period. Serious research is just beginning. We now have 4 sentences averaging 14.5 words per sentence. The first 2 sentences begin with dependent clauses, while the 3rd and 4th sentences begin with the subjects of independent clauses. We've achieved the desired range for sentence lengths, and the sentences present varied sentence patterns.